Imagine if one day you open social media to discover people calling for witches to be burned at the stake. Now also imagine that when you open social media, it was conservative political commentators offering people to hunt down witches, and they even give you a book on how to identify them. Naturally, you'd probably have a feeling of bewilderment, and that is exactly what I felt when I saw Candace Owens flashing a book called The Talmudic Jew that accuses Jews of weird things such as blood libel. The book, The Talmudic Jew, was originally written in German by August Rohling in 1871. The book flamed anti-Jewish rhetoric that would directly cause widespread mass hysteria and contributed to conspiracy theories that were used in trials, such as the infamous blood libel that took place in Tizla, Esler, Hungary. And I'm going to explain this trial, as the conspiracy theories used in it are akin to those that were used during the witch trials and are almost identical to the rhetoric that Candace Owens is spewing some 200 years later. On April 1st, 1882, in a small town, there was a 14-year-old Christian girl named Esther, who was a servant in the home of Andreas Hurry. Andreas sent Esther out to run errands, but sadly, she would never return or be seen alive again. Naturally, after Esther went missing, the town started to search for Esther. But after not having any leads or ideas what could have possibly happened to her, two political influencers, like Candace Owens is a political influencer today, started a rumor that the Jews did it. Onity of Tizla Esler and Victor von Istadasi were already trying to push the expulsion of the Jews from Hungary and decided to use Esther's disappearance as the perfect opportunity to claim that the 14-year-old Christian girl had been a victim to Jewish ritual slaughter for the Passover. It didn't take much getting help either, because women in the town of Tizla Esler in 1882 had a similar mindset to Candace Owens in 2025 and would stop at nothing to persecute innocent people. They even coerced and coached Jewish witnesses as young as 5 years old to provide false and yet graphic details of Esther being ritually killed. They knew they were lying, but they didn't care because their hate was stronger than their morals or the obligation to be honest. These women were crazy. They gave the 5-year-old witness sugar, money, presents, and all they could in order to coach the child to say he saw specifics, such as an incision made in Esther's neck in order to drain her blood. Now, the townspeople could have stood up to these women. They could have called them out for coercing a 5-year-old, but they didn't, because when people are cowards, when they're scared, or when they simply don't care about Jew hatred, they'll turn the other way and make up any excuse in their mind in order to not address it. And sadly, we still see this today.
And the people who refuse to condemn Candace's truly vicious attacks, and some of them are speaking here, are guilty of cowardice. Yes, cowardice.
The lies in this blood libel didn't end with the 5-year-old, however. After beatings, wrongful imprisonment, and torture of several Jews in the community, they also got others to say that Esther was being used as a Shabbat goy. And for context, a Shabbat goy is a non-Jew who performs tasks forbidden to Jews on Shabbat. So they use this idea to say, well, Esther was in a Jewish home because she was a Shabbat goy. Although that never happened, it's just simply what they tortured Jewish witnesses to say happened. Essentially, they were trying to paint Esther as a Jewish slave, something Candace Owens believes Jews want to do to all non-Jews.
Values that exist outside of the Talmud. You describe yourself as a Talmudic Jew, and I've learned what's in that Talmud, and I encourage other people at home to learn what is in that Talmud so that you know what Ben thinks of you, because he doesn't just hate me, he hates you too, white men. He hates all black people, okay? If he's following the rules of the Talmud, I mean, when I say hates, they think that we're animals, that they have a right to own us, that they have a right to make us worship them, that they have a right to lie to us, that they have a history of slavery, because that wasn't exactly a white men sport, okay? Jewish people were the ones that were trading us. Jewish people were in control of the slave trade. They've buried a lot of it.
And just as Candace Owens lied about Jews, seeing non-Jews as nothing more than slaves and hating them and viewing them as animals, obviously they also lied about Esther being a Shabbat goy. The entire event in 1882 would come to an end when they found Esther's body in a river. Esther was identified by the clothes she was wearing on the day that she went missing, and the body had 0 puncture wounds on the neck, making it clear that the 5-year-old child was coerced to lie. All the Jews who were falsely condemned were eventually declared innocent, but it took over a year to resolve this case. So this book that Candace Owens was flashing as she went on a rampage against Ben Shapiro, the Talmudic Jew, was very extensively quoted by the Catholic press. Candace Owens is also Catholic, but it did not become a political force until the appearance of anti-Semitism, especially until the Tizah Esler affair. At this time, Franz Delitzsch, a Christian, defended Judaism against the attacks of Rowling. At the same time, Joseph S. Bloch wrote articles in which he accused Rowling of ignorance and a forgery of the text being the Talmud. Rowling initially went to go and sue Bloch but dropped the case, probably because it was proven that he actually did forge the texts. Now, what's interesting is that when his blood libels, when his lies didn't work, he came up with another solution, which was Zionism. That's right, folks. Rowling, the author that Candace Owens is pushing, actually believed in Zionism, which is very ironic considering the fact that Candace Owens herself is very pro-Palestinian. The author that Candace Owens is pushing became a disgraced theologian. In his obituary, it even states that Emperor Franz Joseph dismissed him once it was proved that he forged Jewish texts in connection with a ritual trial. It also states that Rowling had been living in poverty for many years before his death. When you hate so much that you lie and create mass hysteria, it doesn't work out. Candace Owens, she'll have her moment of falling to the bottom, no differently than Rowling, but the damage caused in the process is profound. Now let's discuss this idea that Jews just want non-Jewish slaves, because that's one of the venomous propaganda pieces of absolute malarkey that Candace was pushing, right? Jews do not see non-Jews as their sole purpose just to be slaves for Jews. That's not a thing. In fact, the goal for non-Jews, according to Judaism, is very, very simple. It's to create righteous societies in which humanity recognizes the oneness of God. That's it. That's all. It's the no-hide laws. And Christians, for the most part, are doing a good job at helping to create those righteous societies. There are so many paranoid delusions about how Jews see Gentiles. Like, look at this trial with this 14-year-old girl, okay? So they said that she was a Shabbos goy, a Shabbat goy. So let's talk about that, all right? Shabbat goys are not allowed. There are no shortcuts in Judaism. And what do I mean by shortcuts? You can't just use Gentiles and non-Jews to do something for you on Shabbat because you yourself failed to do it. They know this, they believe this, they teach this. If you did not get something done prior to Shabbat, you can't just make someone else do it because that's just rule bending in a way that's not authentic to the purpose of Shabbat. The idea is that there is a rejuvenation of creative energy that the Shabbat restores. Why else do you think that there is no writing or artistic work done on Shabbat? Think about it, okay? After God created for 6 days, he rested. He created for 6 days, right? However, in Genesis, it does not say God did work, which is avoda in Hebrew, but rather it uses the word malacha, which is a type of materially creative work, which is a big difference. A Rabbi Judah Dardick explains this in an article featured in Jweekly that I'll leave a link to in the description so you guys can educate yourself more on that. But the bottom line is that using a non-Jew to perform materially creative work on Shabbos is not allowed. That's the bottom line. Of course, the Jew haters that were convincing Jews in the community to state that they were using Esther as a Shabbat goy wouldn't know anything about the Hebrew words or the variations or the difference because all they really had was lies and conspiracy theories told by people like Rowling. Thankfully, a lot of those lies are no longer being believed. There are Christians who are taking a stand against Candace Owens no differently than there were Christians who took a stand against Rowling. And it's really important to be on the right side of history. I know we hear that phrase all the time. It's almost overused. Nobody cares anymore. But for the Christian community, I would just have to ask, are you going to be a Christian like Franz Delitzsch, who successfully defended Jews and debunked the lies by Rowling, or are you going to be like the people who engaged in the witch trials and like the women who fed a 5-year-old sugar in order to falsely condemn the innocent? The choice is yours, of course. It always has been, and it always will be. But you have a moment now to decide which person you're going to be, which Christian you're going to be. The ones that defend Jews against libel, like the ones that Candace Owens is spreading, or like the Christians who just play the part and feed into the mass hysteria and only later realize how wrong they truly were. I hope we all choose wisely.